Okay, okay. Once again, I welcome Dr. Madhumita Paranspe. She is MD Ayurveda physician, acupuncturist, consultant. Few of her introduction is certified in basic traditional medicine from Indian Academy of Acupuncture, certified in music therapy from Sura Sanjeevan Academy under Pandit Shashank Katti sir, certified in Samvahan vibrational massage, basic and advanced under Michael Trimber, certified in advanced teachers training diploma in yoga from Ghantali Mitra Mandal Thane, and she is qualified level 2 QCI level 2 in yoga teachers training by Indian Yoga Association. So I welcome doctor, and the dais is yours for today's topic, yoga for diabetes.
Thank you so much, Dr. Sheetal. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes, everyone is hearing, and if anyone want to ask question, we will take at the end of the session. Kindly chat.
Sure, sure. How can I start my presentation?
Yes, it is there in your screen. Just you have to next.
Okay.
It is moving.
No, it is not moving. So, can
Check
you
your
start the
cursor up
I
and down.
no, can you start the presentation for me?
Okay. It is started already.
I cannot see it on my screen, however. Seems to be some technical problem.
Are you looking?
Yeah, now this is fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So thank you so much for the kind words of introduction, and thank you for this opportunity for inviting me here to speak about my experiences on yoga for diabetes. I apologize to everybody that we had a technical problem starting this presentation. However, I'll try to make it up in the times that come, right? So I will start with the presentation without wasting further time.
You are comfortable,
Uh,
ma'am. Take
yeah,
your own time. Don't be hurry.
sure,
Give a good
sure.
knowledge.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Okay, so I will just begin. Look at this slide. This is such an alarming slide. Although diabetes is often called the sweet disease, what we are looking now at is not so sweet. So this is an alarming reality picture that we hold here. The number of diabetics in India is about 77 million as of now, and we are only second behind China. The pre-diabetes prevalence is 24%, and we are going into a very bitter truth here, right? Next, I would like to draw your attention to an article which was published in the Financial Express on the eve of the World Diabetes Day, that is 13th of November. So we have about 77 million people suffering from diabetes. And there was a study conducted by Newberg Diagnostics, wherein they collected the blood sugar samples of about 4.5 lakh people across age groups. And this was done at 5 cities, as you can see on the screen, and over a period of 2 years. And what they found was about 68% of people over the age of 50 years are diabetics in India. About 24% are in the middle age group, and less than 35, which is a very young population, we have about 8% of the population. Now, there's also one more alarming thing here that, borderline sugar levels, people having borderline sugar levels called as pre-diabetics are about 24%. So, 1 in 6 diabetics in India 1 in 6 diabetics all over the world is from India. Now, let's look at what the top doctors in the country who specialize in diabetes are talking about this disease. Now, look at the screen and see what doctors are saying about this disease. Now, this is a disease which affects so many factors, not just not just the blood sugar levels. And it is a lifestyle disease, and what we need is a multidimensional approach and a multifaceted approach to cure this disease. They also speak about tackling the pre-diabetic population so that once we given some lifestyle changes to these pre-diabetics, they can not convert into diabetics. So we can actually reverse the diabetes pathophysiology in these pre-diabetics. Now, as we have already seen in the earlier lectures, these are the prameha hetu, the causative factors. I will not delve deep into these into this slide because we've already talked about this in the previous lectures. Remember what happened in the last 6-7 months when we were going through a complete lockdown? We were eating, overeating, eating junk food, trying out newer and new recipes, putting them on social media, eating with family. Now happiness in India is translated to overeating with family, right? And then disturbed sleep cycles owing to whatever OTT platforms that offer us so much of entertainment, lack of physical exercise because we were stuck at our homes. Next slide. These are the symptoms of diabetes. The first slide shows you the common symptoms seen in diabetics. And the next slide, as you can see from head to toe, these are the areas where diabetes also affects. So it's not just about the blood sugar levels, but in fact, it affects all the areas of your body, right? So this is next. The major complications of diabetes, which are seen in chronic diabetics. Now, this affects, as we have seen in the earlier slide, every part of your body. So it's more about a circulation problem and a neurological problem. So microvascular and macrovascular changes, extremities are most affected. So you have delayed wound healing, you have a lack of blood supply to the brain. So you may have loss of consciousness, you may have transient ischemic attacks. At the eye and the sensory organs, you may have retinopathies. At the kidneys, again, high blood pressure, again, it affects the kidneys. You may also have skin changes as well as cardiovascular changes. Now, for effective management of diabetes, we again require multifaceted approach. So it's not just going to be medicines, it also requires diet and exercise. Now, medicines are not just for lowering your blood sugar levels, but also to break the steps of etiology or to break the steps of samprapti. So, what if we had diet and medicines and exercise to control every step of samprapti, control the complications, and finally improve the quality of life by Agnivardhan, Ras and other Dhatu Prasadan, Balavardhan, Ojavardhan. Now here by Agnivardhan, we need Jatharagni as well as all of the Dhatwagni Vardhan. Now here let's compare how yoga is different from other physical exercises. In yoga, you have a focus on mental, physical, emotional as well as spiritual well-being. We have specific postures which are controlled movements performed in rhythm coordinated with your breathing. Now this requires a body and mind involvement, right? So these are not just exercises, this is more than that. Okay. This is more than that, and it requires holding of balance in various postures. It also requires for us to be mindful of what we are doing. So we need to be in the present moment, whatever we are doing. So whatever posture, may it be basic or advanced, we have to be very mindful of the present moment. This in turn helps to improve the muscle strength, improve the tone of the muscles, increase the flexibility because of the stretchings involved, and it relaxes. It does not drain you out of energy like the other exercises. It actually conserves your energy and leaves you feeling refreshed after having a session. Yoga, as the word suggests, it's a union between body and mind and spirit, right? So it's not just confined to a physical exercise, it is more than that. And as we will be seeing in the later slides. Yoga sadhana, if we see, it is divided into Bahiranga Yoga and Antaranga Yoga. So it is actually an 8-limbed sadhana, also called as the Ashtanga Yoga, wherein Yama, Niyama are the moral codes of conduct and the social etiquettes. So what should you do when you are alone? What should you do when you are with people? How should you behave? It is resembling the Pathya and Apathya given in Ayurveda for specific diseases. Asana, as we all know, are the physical postures. Pranayama is a regulation or controlled breathing. Pratyahar is acting like a bridge between the Bahiranga Yoga and the Antaranga Yoga. And as we perform the Bahiranga Yoga, slowly we can gradually progress into Antaranga Yoga, that is Dharana, Dhyan, and Samadhi, which are actually acting from within. Now let us move on to yoga sadhanas specific for diabetes. Now, when we look at a multifaceted disease like diabetes, what we require is not just physical postures or asanas, we will require something more than that. So that something more is this. We will require Omkar chanting, Sukshma Vyayam, asanas which are specific for general fitness as well as specific to diabetes, pranayama, that is the breathing exercises, deep relaxations, and the Shuddhi Kriya. Now, yogic Shuddhi Kriya are 6 processes, just like we have Panchakarma described in the Ayurveda texts, we have the Shat Karma described in the yogic classical texts. Now, these resemble the cleansing processes mentioned in Ayurveda, the detoxification processes. Neti, Dhauti, Basti, Nauli, Kapalbhati, and Tratak. So what we are looking here at is just a cleansing process. Now the benefit of the yogic Shatkarma is that there are no elaborate pre panchakarma, like we have pre cleansing and during cleansing and post cleansing procedures, elaborate methods of doing it. Here we do not have such elaborate uh, processes or steps. So it can be done simply. It can be done with less of raw materials, less of time taken for doing all of that, and less of preparatory procedures for this. So it is very easy to actually administer. It only requires raw materials required is just a solution of water and just some salt. So that's a saline water you will require and not much. So it can be taken care of very easily. Panchakarma happens to be a very elaborate procedure requiring lots of time devoted by the patient as well as the physician, requiring raw materials and requiring physical labor. So you require trained Panchakarma therapists to administer these things. But here in Yogic Shatkarma, if you have learned it once, then you can do it on your own. Of course, if you do it under the supervision of a trained yoga teacher, if you are doing it specific for a disease or disorder. However, it is easy to do as a cleansing technique. So, for example, if we had to look at Dhauti, which resembles Vaman actually. So, Vaman would require 7 or 15 days of Snehapan Purva Karma, Snehan Svedan, and then Vaman, and then post Vaman, we would require a elaborate plan of medicines. Shamana Aushadhi is also an elaborate diet procedure. But here in Dhauti, you wouldn't require 7 to 8 days of pre cleansing. You can just decide to do it and then do it. Yeah, so it can be taken care of within 1 or 2 days or maximum 3 days. So the benefits can be had in less amount of time, under less raw materials, in less money and in less efforts. Now next we have Omkar chanting. So Omkar is supposed to be the first sound that was created in the universe. Omkar, if you look at it, comprises of 3 sounds, the U, and M, right? The 3 sounds of Omkar, when you chant these sounds, it immediately brings your body and mind into a balance. Now, this is more about doing than really talking about it. So, once we chant Omkar, it immediately shifts your attention from the external to the internal. It brings your attention to yourself, within you, within your body, and within your mind. It eliminates extra thoughts from your mind and it brings you to the present moment. What we still require is being mindful, being attentive, being relaxed, and being alert in this present moment. So, this is what Omkar can do for you. Next, let us look at Sukshma Vyayam. Sukshma Vyayam are the stretching or the loosening exercises that are performed at every joint. So, if you look at all the joints in the body, so we know the range of movements that are possible at every joint, right? So, if you look at the ankle joint, it can be everted, inverted, flexed, and extended, also circularly rotation movements. So once we start with Sukshma Vyayam, these are the preparatory positions for the asana practice which comes later on, right? So it can also be called as a stretching or a pre-asana warm-up, right? Now these movements happen at every joint. So if you have the ankle, then you have the knee joint. So the knee joint, you have an extension and a flexion of the knee joint. You also have the horizontal movements at the knee joint, which are rarely performed in our day-to-day routine. Next, we have the hip joint. Again, hip joint, all ranges of movement. vertical, horizontal, abduction, adduction, flexion, and extension. We also have a pelvic rotation, a circular movement that can be done in the standing posture. Next, the torso and the shoulder joint. So at the shoulder joint, we're also aware of flexion, extension, circular rotation movements, abduction, adduction. We also have the neck movements, again, up and down movements, left to right, then tilting, and the circular movements. Now, the benefit of Sukshma Vyayam is one, it prepares your body for the asana practice which comes later on. Second, it improves the microcirculation, so improves the circulation towards the end organs. Mm. Then third is it improves the neuromuscular coordination because you are doing these movements with full present, being in the full mindful state, present state. This also improves being attentive at that particular area. So, for example, you have a movement at the knee joint and you are aware of what is happening at the knee joint and the muscles surrounding the knee joint. So that's a neuromuscular coordination. So people who have a difficulty having a concentration at a particular area, this also helps in improving that. It improves the muscle flexibility because we are moving the muscles. Now this is just a chart showing what are the Sukshma Vyayams or the stretchings possible at every joint. Let us now look at some asanas which help diabetics. This is Vakrasana to be performed in the sitting position. Now you're sitting comfortably, then you bend one knee and place it beyond the other knee and you twist to the other side. Now as you can see in the picture, this asana offers a good twist to the spine. Now because you are twisted with the spine, it tones the abdominal muscles. Most asanas that work on diabetes will be working on the abdomen as we know, right? So this offers a good stimulation to the abdominal organs and tones the abdominal muscles. It reduces the belly fat and of course it relieves constipation. The next asana will be Parvatasana. So here again you can see the stretch, the vertical stretch of the upper body. The lower body is stable and stationary. Now because you are stretching the body vertically, this allows the diaphragm to also release the excess pressure on the abdomen. So when you are stretching in a vertical direction, the diaphragm muscles also get relaxed and that's why that releases the pressure on the abdominal organs, stimulating their proper functioning. This is also a good asana to reduce the belly fat. Next, the Paschimottanasana. This is a complete forward bend of the body. Because you are putting a lot of pressure on the abdomen, this asana will improve digestion and the abdominal functioning, the functioning of all the abdominal organs. Now, this helps to release bloating because you're increasing the abdominal pressure. So, if there is any flatulence or bloating, then that gas also will be released. Right? This helps in constipation because it helps to improve the peristaltic movements of the intestines. Next asana is Ardha Matsyendrasana, which is just a gentle progression from Vakrasana. Now here, as you can see, this asana offers a lateral twist to the spine and the oblique muscles of the abdomen. Now as we've seen in the earlier asanas, again abdominal pressure is increased, so this aids in the proper functioning of the abdominal organs. It helps to release the toxins from the system. Again, this will improve digestion and relieve constipation. This asana is, however, a little difficult to perform. So, initially, better not to do it in case you are not able to do it correctly. Instead of doing it incorrectly, better to stop only at Vakrasana. And then, as you progress in Vakrasana, as you start feeling comfortable in Vakrasana, then you can move ahead and go to this advanced pose. Here we have Bhujangasana, which is an asana in the prone position. So you lie down on your belly and place your hands by your chest and slowly start lifting your upper body off the floor. Now here you can as it is see that there's a good expansion provided to the chest and the abdomen. Again, this will improve the tone of the abdominal muscles. It is going to stimulate the proper functioning of the abdominal organs. It's going to improve your breathing because you have expanded your chest. Now look at what is happening at the neck. You are looking behind, there's a complete stretch to your neck area. So it also stimulates the proper functioning of the thyroid gland. This is a very good asana for diabetics. Next, we have the Pavan Muktasana. Now, as the name suggests, this is a very good asana to relieve flatulence. So, in case there's a indigestion problem to somebody, they can do this asana regularly. You can see that in the final step of Pavan Muktasan, there is an increase in the abdominal pressure, and you are holding that position for some moments. So you are able to control that abdominal pressure and tolerate it. Again, because of increase in the abdominal pressure, it's going to provide a gentle massage to all the organs in the abdominal cavity. So be it the upper abdomen, middle abdomen, lower abdomen, as well as the pelvis. Now here, because it's also giving also giving a proper stimulation to the pelvis, it also helps to improve the tone of the urinary bladder, and that is why it also helps in diabetics. Of course, it is going to burn the excess belly fat and improve your evacuation and help in constipation. This is the Balasana or the child's pose. Now this, when you perform it, it actually feels like you have surrendered to yourself. Now imagine putting your head on the lap of somebody you love, the lap of your mother or your grandmother. This asana, when you perform, it's almost as if you are placed your head on your own lap and surrendering to yourself. Again, if you look at this asana, it's going to help improve the tone of the abdominal muscles, increase the pressure on the abdomen, and improve the functioning of the internal organs. Because you have surrendered, you're completely given away all of the worries that you have in your mind. This is a very calming asana, and it helps to release the anxiety and the stress. It also offers a good stretch to your spine, improving the circulation to your brain. This asana is a backward bend. Now, this is contrary to what earlier asanas we have seen. So, there was an increase in the abdominal pressure because of the forward bending. Here we have backward bending, and there's an opening up of the chest and the abdomen muscles, right? So, this again conversely would affect the abdominal functioning, the abdominal organs functioning, and again aid in reducing the excess belly fat, stimulate the endocrine organs, because look at the position of the neck. What happens to the glands in the neck? This is a good asana to improve the stretching and the stretching of the spine, elongation of the spine. This is also going to relieve your constipation. Next asana is the Setu Bandhasana. Now, Setu Bandhasana, look at the position of the body. It almost appears as if it's a bridge pose. You have lifted your lower back and in turn lifted some part of the thigh and some part of the mid back, right? Now, this is again improving the tone of the abdominal muscles. It helps to burn the excess belly fat because there's a improved supply of oxygen and nutrients to the brain. Look at the position of this asana. So there will be a backflow of the blood towards the brain, and that's why it helps to calm your mind, release any stresses, anxieties that you have, and actually put you into a good relaxation state. Now, this is also going to promote good sleep. Of course, you have the benefits of the abdominal area. This asana is the chakrasana, wherein your body actually looks like a circular wheel. This is again a difficult asana to perform, and you can only perform this if you have followed some days of regular practice. This cannot be done in the initial state of your practice. Look at position of the abdomen, look at the position of the chest and the neck. Here again, you have a stimulation of the endocrine organs, endocrine glands, because of the specific position that this asana offers. Abdominal excessive belly fat will be burnt, abdominal muscles will be toned. Again, it will improve the functioning of the abdominal organs. This is also putting some pressure on the pelvis, so it's going to improve the bladder tone. Look at this asana now, Sarvangasana. So now, as the name suggests, this asana will help to improve the functioning of all areas of your body, aptly known as Sarvangasana, right? Now, this is a complete topsy-turvy pose, and this improves the backflow of blood from your toes, from your extremities towards your heart. Now, this is also going to improve the circulation of the blood towards your brain. It helps to calm your mind, and because of the specific position, it helps in slimming, or if there's a weight gain problem, then this can be solved with Sarvangasana. It is difficult to perform this asana, so initially it may not be taken into consideration. However, with some support, you can lean against the wall or lean against the support offered by an instructor, and this can be done. However, I personally prefer not to teach this in the initial stages of yoga practice because it is more about conserving what you have and then slowly building on one step at a time. The most favorite of yoga practitioners, the Shavasana, look at the position of the body. This is peacefully lying down on the floor in a comfortable, relaxed state. People often sleep in Shavasana. However, it is important to be attentive, not go into a sleep state whenever you're performing Shavasana. What we do here is consciously try to release the tension, release the tightness, the stiffness in any part of the body if it is there, and then relax the body part, relax the mind, relax the body, and then try to go inward. When you go inward, you certainly go into a higher state of consciousness. This helps to really relax your body and mind. Any stresses or worries that you have are released. This also puts your body in a kind of a reboot state. Like you can reboot your computer, you can reboot your cellular health with this position. This acts on all of the endocrine glands because whenever you are resting, whenever you are recovering, the endocrine glands get a chance to really come back on their proper optimal functioning. This also offers a good balance to the sympathetic and parasympathetic system. So, whenever we are stressed out, the sympathetic system is in an overdrive. Now, here you give a chance to the parasympathetic system of your body to take over your body and mind, and then do the job, right? So, Shavasana helps in all disorders, diseases. It's also helping in diabetics. Let us now look at a few breathing exercises. This is called as Anulom Vilom Pranayama or the alternate nostril breathing. What you do here is close one nostril, take in a breath, a deep breath from the open nostril, and then change the direction. So if you've taken a breath from the left nostril, then you exhale from the right, then you again inhale from the right and exhale from the left. This happens to be one round of Anulom Vilom or one round of alternate nostril breathing. Now, as we know that the body has left and right parts which are acting in a sense of equilibrium or balance. So, when you breathe from your left, you are stimulating the Ida side. When you breathe from the right, you are stimulating the Pingala. So, Ida Pingala are the two sides of the Sushumna Nadi. Now, these are three important nadis or three important channels through which the prana or the life force flows. This is described in the yogic classical texts. Like we have the sympathetic and parasympathetic system, they have described in the terminologies of Ida, Pingala, and Sushumna. So, this will calm your mind. This will release any extra thoughts, any unpleasant thoughts, memories, interactions from your mind because the breath is connected to the mind. So, as you slow down your breath, even your mind will be slowed down. Next, we have the single nostril breathing, also called as the Nadi Shuddhi Pranayam. So, here you would breathe from the left and breathe out from the left. Then change the side. So, breathe in, inhale from left and then exhale from the left. Now, this is again acting for a balance between the left and right part of your body. Now, again, the mind becomes calm. The breathing improves because most of the times when we breathe in our day to day routines, we are doing it on a very shallow level. We never ever do a deep breathing because it is not required. But when you are performing pranayam, it's a controlled, regulated breathing. You essentially breathe in deep and breathe out deep. So, breathe out deep means exhale completely. This helps to reduce the rate of your breathing and reduce the rate of thoughts that come to your mind. More importantly, overthinking is what causes lots of problems. So, when you do this pranayam, you reduce the rate of your breathing, reduce the rate of your thinking. So, when the thinking reduces, the mind body balance happens. The nerves are calm, the mind becomes clear and in the present moment. This is a good practice. Next, we have the abdominal breathing. Now, usually in our day-to-day routines, we never ever perform the abdominal breathing. We just breathe in and breathe out from the chest. Now, this is a good practice. So, you can place one hand on the chest, the other hand on the abdomen. And as you inhale, allow the chest and abdomen muscles to move out, bulge out with the air. And as you breathe out, allow these muscles to fall inward. Now remember, the breath that you take in is not entering the abdomen. Yes, it is just entering the chest cavity. It is not entering the abdomen, but it's just a change in the position of the diaphragm. So as you breathe in, the diaphragm, breathe in deep, the diaphragm moves down and hence the bulging out of the abdomen. And as you breathe out, the diaphragm moves upwards and hence the going inward of your abdomen. Yes, so most importantly, the air that you breathe in does not enter the abdomen cavity, although you can see the differences, the bulging in and bulging out of the abdominal muscles. Now, what this takes care of is whenever you are moving your abdominal muscles in and out, it's a controlled movement. So, it helps again to tone the abdomen muscles and offers like a gentle massage to the internal abdominal organs, providing good optimal functioning of these internal organs. It also improves your breathing, the speed of your breathing reduces, and the speed of your thoughts reduces. Because you are breathing in well, the respiration is well, oxygen supplied to all the areas of your body is well. And that's why it's a very good breathing practice to promote muscle growth and feel energetic. Next, we have the Kapalbhati or the skull breathing. Now, in Kapalbhati, you inhale once and there are multiple strokes of exhalations. So, essentially, this is a forceful exhalation, an active exhalation, and a passive inhalation. Usually, in our breathing, it's an active inhalation and passive exhalation. In Kapalbhati, you have an active exhalation and a passive inhalation. Now again, this is going to help for elimination of the waste, accumulated waste in your chest cavity. Because you are stroking your abdomen, it's going to tone the abdomen muscles, improve the core abdominal strength, also improve the functioning of the internal abdominal organs. And because you are regulating your breath, it's going to calm the mind. Yes, relieve depression, anxiety, stress. Also allow you to empty the thoughts. So just like toxins are released from the body, the toxic thoughts, the toxic interactions, the past memories also will be emptied from the body. Then we have Bhasrika Pranaya, where we have rapid forceful inhalations and rapid forceful exhalations. So here the speed of your inhalation and exhalation, so the speed of your breathing is high, much higher than what we would normally or perform in our routines. So you gradually go on increasing the rate of your breathing and gradually slow down the breath. This is essentially an invigorating procedure. It requires a lot of training. So in the initial stages of your yoga practice, it is usually not performed. First to be performed are the Nadi Shuddhi, the Anulom Vilom, and then whenever you feel that there is a good control over your breathing, you have a good control over your chest and abdominal movements, you have a good holding of breath, only then you can proceed to this Bhasrika Pranayam. Now, because this involves rapid forceful breathing, it's going to stroke your abdomen and chest muscles. Again, this is going to tone the abdominal muscles, improve the strength, and release toxins because of improved muscle tone, reduce the belly fat. Essentially, this is a very invigorating procedure. It energizes your body and mind. So, this has to be performed with caution under somebody who's trained. Next, we have the Ujjayi Pranayam. Ujjayi, as the name suggests, it's a positive or uplifting pranayam. Here, you inhale deeply, and while you inhale, you constrict your throat. So, you are taking in a forceful inhalation whenever you are having a constricted throat. So, when you inhale deeply, and when you exhale, again with a constricted throat. So, you are going to hear the voice of your own inhalations and exhalations typical of this pranayam. This helps to again regulate the breathing. It helps to balance the left and right parts of your body, the heating and the warming mechanisms. And because it is a uplifting pranayam, it helps to make you feel positive. This is also very good to clear your mind of unnecessary thoughts. And finally, we have Bhramari Pranayam. Bhramari is the sound of the male bee. It's a humming sound, a good sonorous voice, and the sound helps to really focus our attention on that sound. So the mind and body becomes calm, you feel quiet when you are focusing on that sound. It is actually a very sweet sound made by your own body and mind. And when you focus on that sound, it helps to really calm the mind. It reduces the blood pressure because it's a calming sound. It helps for you to feel your body and mind in balance. It immediately brings you back to reality and helps to improve your progression from the external to the internal. So it helps you to really start focusing deep within yourself. This promotes a sense of joy and well being. This can be more felt after you have done it and experienced it rather than just listening about this. Now, we have seen some asanas, some pranayam practices, some sukshma vyayam, and some shuddhi kriyas that are beneficial for diabetics. However, it is important to believe that it cannot be done on a particular day. Now, doing it only on one day, everything is not possible, and again, it's not recommended also. So, you have to take into consideration the individual case history, the age of whoever is suffering from diabetes, the constitution, we have the prakriti. So, for example, if I had to give you an example, if it's a Vata Prakriti or a Pitta Prakriti, some practices like the Basrika have to be performed with a lot of caution. Now, in Vata and Pitta Prakriti people, they are usually overactive. Yeah? So, they can then perform Brahmari Pranayam more. So, Brahmari is a cooling down or a calming procedure. So, more should be performed, Brahmari should be performed by the Vata and the Pitta constitution people. Conversely, for the Kapha people, you need something to invigorate them, to really start exerting them. So, Bhasrika or Kapalbhati would be a good practice for them. Again, depending on whatever is the constitution, the age, the other fitness levels, you can try incorporating some of these asanas, incorporate more asanas, or take less of them. How much you do is not important. How you do it, how you plan it step by step, and doing it on a long term is going to give you more results. So it's not to be performed every single thing on the same day. There has to be a plan to how you're going to really incorporate that into your daily practice. Now, here's a case study of a diabetic patient that I had the opportunity to be working with. Now, this was a male patient aged 68 years, a known case of diabetes and hypertension, and he was taking allopathic and Ayurveda medicines for diabetes and his hypertension. He was a very sincere patient and following his diet and regularly exercising along with walking. Now, a few days before, it so happened that along with doing all of this, the blood sugar levels didn't seem to really come to the normal levels. So we decided to incorporate a few yoga sessions along with whatever he was already doing. So along with diet and medicine, we decided to also incorporate some yoga sessions for him. We did about 3 sessions a week, and each session was for about 45 minutes. And some Sukshma Vyayams and some pranayam practices, some asanas, and some deep relaxation was performed on every day. We started on 5th of October and till today we have finished about 21 sessions. We are not yet done and still continuing the practices. Now, on the days that we did not have our sessions, the patient was encouraged to continue some of the practices. Uh, Not all of the practices, just some of the practices. So whenever I taught these practices, and then I thought that it was now safe for him to practice some of those practices individually without any supervision. That was when I used to tell him to continue only that part of the practice. And he was very sincere and regular in his practice. And we often used to talk about how much was done and how difficult or how easy it was to perform when he did that alone. He was very enthusiastic in learning and disciplined in his approach. Now, here are the blood sugar levels that he shared with me. Look at the gradual blood sugar improvement, the level improvement. Earlier, the blood sugar levels were in the range of about 140 to 165 fasting, and now earlier it was 240 to 253. Earlier it was the fasting sugar levels were 140 and 165. Look at the blood sugar fasting levels now. So they are now below 100, and the postprandial, the post lunch sugar levels were about 240 plus initially, and now after starting the practice, it's come down less than around 150 and now come down to 120. And now look at the other changes that he has observed. So look at the mental mind frames. Initially, there's a lot of anxiety, confusion, and irritating behavior. And nowadays, he feels that he's quite composed, he's cool, he's positive in his approach. He's also found some improvement in his creative expression and a clarity of thoughts. The blood pressure levels were earlier in the range of 160, 180 systolic and diastolic 100, and nowadays they stabilize around 130, 140 systolic and 80 diastolic. Earlier, there used to be excessive urination at night, and that's why his sleep used to be disturbed. Nowadays, the frequency of urination, mostly in the night, has reduced, and that's why he can have a sound sleep. There is also a skin change that he has observed. So earlier there was a or a dryness in the extremities and a blackness. Now, without applying any moisturizer, now he has seen an improvement in the moistness of his skin and the color of his skin. So this is just a manifestation of an improved microcirculation. Earlier, there were many food cravings. Now, because his body mind is in a state of balance, he now craves food less and he eats well and he eats optimally. The muscle loss is now recouped to a certain extent, and mostly it can be felt in the major muscle groups. The knee issues, now this is an added benefit. He earlier had a knee pain whenever he used to sit down in a cross-legged position. But because most of the asanas in the sitting position require you to sit down, cross-legged position, because of that practice, he has started sitting down comfortably. Now, if you look at this, this is a probable impact of regular yoga sadhana. Now, it shows you some physical changes, some psychological changes, and some behavioral changes. We really do not know how it actually works. So, exact mechanisms of the changes in the physiology that are seen, we do not know. This is just a probable way that it might be working. So, if you look at the physiological changes, so that is changes in the blood sugar levels, changes in the blood weight, changes in the body weight, changes in the lipid profiles, improvement in the liver functioning, and the endocrinal functioning. So, improvement in the endocrinal secretions. You can also see an immunomodulation. There happens to be a good cardiac functioning. Now, how this exactly happens, we do not know, but this is just a change that is observed at the physiological level. Psychologically, the mood swings are less. You have a steady temperament, you have a calm state of mind most of the times, and behavioral changes are what are seen because of an improved body and mind. So you start adhering more to your diet and medicines, you become sincere in your approach. So diabetes no longer feels like a restriction on your food and activities, it is more a way of life, and you start accepting that and mending your life accordingly. So doing the right choices happens without any compulsion or without any external motivation, it just starts happening on its own. These are a few papers which show the probable way that the yoga practices can help in diabetes. We've seen in most of the asanas that most of the asanas work on the abdominal area. So central obesity and type 2 diabetes are related, and the person who's having a central obesity is more predisposed to having diabetes, or it's also an associated risk factor. So unless you reduce the central obesity, it's difficult to take care of your blood sugar levels and keep them steady like that. So these are some interesting papers, and what they come up with is that probably the abdominal fat causes the fat cells to release the pro-inflammatory chemicals, which can make the body less sensitive to insulin, and it provides by disrupting the function of the insulin responsive cells and their ability to respond to insulin. What happens with this is an insulin resistance. So that's why the body cannot utilize the glucose, and then you have a raised blood sugar level. With yoga sessions, regularly practicing yoga sessions, you have a reduction in the abdominal fat, and probably that leads to a correction in the insulin uptake. Now, let us look at the Srotas-wise effects that are seen. As we've seen in the earlier asana practices, and this is for the Annava and the Purishava Srotas, the Agni Deepan happens. So, stimulation of the appetite, it aids in proper digestion, improves the tone of the abdominal muscles, and thereby improving the peristaltic movement of the intestines. So, relieves constipation. It also improves the gut absorption and improves the Dhatu Pariposhan Kram. Now, by Agni Deepan here, we can take Jataragni as well as the individual Dhattvagni, which is also going to promote in better tissue formation. Next, we can look at the Rasavasrotas. So, because the ahar gets digested well, it again forms a good Rasadhatu. So, the Adya Dhatu formed is of a good quality. So, it is a Rasa Prasadan. Because the first Dhatu formed is of a good quality, the sequential next Dhatus form will be of a better quality than before. So, there will be a Sapta Dhatu Pariposhan leading to Ojavardhan. So, Agni Deepan and Anuloman allowing Srota Shuddhi and improving the Dhatu Pariposhan Kram, increasing the pushti of all the tissues involved and ultimately Ojvardhan. The Pranavas Rotas. Now, some asanas help in improving the chest movements and expansion of the chest. Now, some pranayamas help in chest and abdominal breathing. So, when you have a regulated and controlled breathing, there is a smooth flow of prana, which is the life force. There's also a breath-mind connection, like we discussed before. So, the reduction in the speed of your breathing also translates into a reduction in the thinking speed. And so, if you are thinking less, you are doing more. This also translates into a calming of the mind and ultimately a well being. Now, Samahasrotas, as we've seen, improves the muscle strength and muscle flexibility. In diabetics, we usually have a Shithilangata. So, there's a word of in the Purva Roop, if you see in the Charak Samhita text, in the Purvarup, it's described as Shithilangata or it's a Bahudrava Shleshma Avastha, a Bahukleda Avastha, and which leads to a Shithila Mamsa or Bahu Med Avastha. So, with a proper controlled exercises of the muscles, what you have is the Shithil Avastha turning into a Drida Mamsa or Drida Gatra Avastha. So, you have a Balavardhan at the Snayu level, also at the Deha level, and that translates into the mental capacity, the Dhairya Vardhan. Next, we have the Astiva Srotas because you have an improved joint movement. So, you have improved bone health, increased range of movement of every joint, improved posture, corrected breathing, and better sense of well being. The Raktava Srotas, there's an improved macro and micro circulation at every part of the body, improves the organ capillary circulation, regulates the blood pressure, improves the nourishment that is provided through the blood to all the parts of the body. Meda Sanchiti is reduced. We have a correction in the central obesity, because of which the laziness, fatigue is reduced, lethargy is reduced, making an individual active, enthusiastic, and youthful. So, after regular yoga practice, you can actually see a difference in the way a person carries himself, conducts himself, the way he walks and talks is completely changed. Majava Srotas now because there's controlled movements at different areas of the body. It improves the neuromuscular conduction. So it protects from nerve damage and it offers a balance between the sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system. The Mutrava Srotas, now there's a Kledahar action here, releases toxins. There's an improved tone of the pelvic organs, especially the urinary bladder. That's why you have a better control of micturition. So the frequency is controlled and the flow is smoothened. Next, we have a Shukrava Srota. So, in terms of diabetics, what we can look at is the Shukra can be translated to the cellular regeneration. So, it's a regeneration happening at every cell of your body. This again, all of these effects can be translated at the Manovaha level also. So, a calming of mind, emptying of thoughts, being in the present moment, having a clarity, attentive, being alert, as well as being relaxed. So, an improvement in the mental status as well. All of this helping for the Ojava Srotas. So, all of the body tissues are rejuvenated and the person has a renewed hope, vigor, and strength. He feels alive, feels exuberant. So the focus is taken away from the disease or disorder that he's suffering, and into what he can, as an individual, have a physical, mental, and emotional well-being. So the focus is now not on the disease, but the focus is on the person and his improvement. This is what I was mentioning about. So if you look at the Samprapti, the stages of the Samprapti, you have Bahu Abadham Medo Mausam Shariraja Kledha. So this Bahu Abadham and Shithil Avastha of the Dhatus and the Dusha Sangraha is converted into a Dhrida Avastha. The toxins are taken care of. There's a Kledahar action happening because of the cleansing processes, and that's why maybe it is helping in the diabetics. We really do not know exactly what are the mechanisms that this happens, but this may just be a clue towards it. What we require is a fine balance between overdoing and underdoing. Now, as we've seen that there are so many asanas that can be incorporated in the practice for diabetics, so many pranayam practices, so many Shuddhi Kriyas, so many Sukshma Vyayams. But important is to make a comprehensive plan by taking into account all of the associated symptoms that a person has, the other fitness levels, the age, constitution, the other symptoms if he has. And there should be a proper plan that is done. There should be a step by step sequential planning of the practices. Initially, it has to be done under supervision, and once the teacher thinks that yes, now the person can do it on his own, without doing it incorrectly. So it's important to do it correctly, and once the teacher feels that it is now okay to be not done under supervision, then that person can be allowed to practice on his own. A few initial practices can, of course, be taught as basic yoga practices. Now, how much you should repeat, what should be the sequence of practices, and how you should modify week by week is something that can be properly decided after having a complete history and sitting one on one and discussing the plans. There should also be a thought given to the rest and recovery. So it's not just about doing, doing, doing. It's more about not doing, but sometimes. So doing it, then allowing the body and mind to recover from what we have done, allow the body and mind to really absorb and assess and reorganize, reboot its system, and then do it again. So it's a fine balance between overdoing and underdoing. So doing is important and undoing is also important. And finally, a lot can be said about this topic of yoga for diabetics, but essentially, yoga is an experiential learning shastra. So, the more you do it on your own, the more you experience it, the more you can explore deep within yourself. So, what are the benefits felt can be not just read but experienced by you. Ultimately, yoga, the word is a union. It's a union between what you are at this point, at the present moment, and what you can become, and the progressive journey towards it. So it's more of what you are right now and what you can become. And it's a progressive, continuous journey. So I welcome you all to this journey of yoga sadhana, and thank you for the patient listening. Thank you, Dr. Sheetal Gosavi, Vedayu Online, for giving me this opportunity to present my thoughts on yoga for diabetics.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you
Thank you
so
very
much.
much, Dr. Madhumita ma'am, for giving such a wonderful session regarding yoga, because yoga is now famous for everything, but many people don't know the procedure, accurate procedure of yoga, and how it is beneficial if we do with the discipline. So thank you very much, and we would like to have you again and again on our platform. And kindly WhatsApp me your questions and feedback as we are running late. I gave my number, Dr. Shraddha, 8828220108. We will forward, and in next session of Madhumita ma'am, we will take every questions. Okay,
Thank
thank
you
you.
so
Thank
much.
you very much. Yeah. Bye. Bye everyone, and thank you for the patience listening.